Welcome to the IT Matters Podcast, where we explore why IT matters and matters pertaining to IT. Here's your host, Aaron Bach.
Welcome. Thanks for joining the IT Matters Podcast. Again, I'm your host, Aaron Bach, with my co-host, Keith Hawkey. Keith, how you doing?
I'm fantastic, Aaron. I've been feeling great today because I've been looking forward to our podcast, Scott, for weeks. He's had an impressive resume, and in our short conversations leading up, it's clear to me he has a lot to add to the IT industry conversation.
That is right. Yeah, Keith, I'm very excited for this one today. Thank you all for listening. If you haven't subscribed, join us. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, your favorite podcast platform. Scott Finkhouse, welcome to the show. How are you doing today, Scott?
I'm doing good. Well, thanks, Keith. Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate it. I'm excited to be on.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So for those of you who do not know Scott, check him out. He's the CIO at NN Inc. He's based in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Scott is he's going to tell you a little bit more today about how he got where he's at, and then we're going to have some really just dialogue around how you advance in IT, some of the challenges along the way, some popular conversations, and then one of the big challenges, balancing budget and risk. So, Scott, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself, your background, personal, professional, et cetera?
I guess I'll start personally. I'm married. I have a couple of kids, grown boys. And I think that's kind of important because while I was going through my whole, getting to this position, was raising my family and doing that. And I think that's something that people that are going to go into IT have to really think about, because IT is a very demanding arena. Because as I always tell my guys, no one has a problem, in finance at midnight on a Friday that they've got to jump on and work all weekend. And IT does. And so you've got to be prepared for that. And so I was fortunate to have a very supportive wife that allowed me to do the things I needed to do and go to the places I needed to while still raising my family. So I think that's a big thing personally, just to understand any job you have to commit to. But I do think IT has got a lot of crisis situations that come up, and unfortunately that does get in the way sometimes, and you have to be prepared for it. So going back, my career is probably 30 some years. Started, and I think I'd have to say it to get to where I am today. It probably started with my father owning a small retail business, because I think it's really helped me in my philosophy as an IT person, and that is service. One thing my dad was he harped on me and pushed very much, educated me at a young age, was your customers. Everyone has a customer. In IT, we have all kinds of customers. We have internal, we have external customers, and how you service those and how you deal with requests, demands, issues, creating relationships. I think relationships are vital in IT. We tend to like to think of IT people as sitting in a little room, pounding away on a keyboard, programming something, and all of a sudden it shows up on somebody's computer. Those days may have been when I first started. Well, it kind of was that way, right? We kind of just started on computers and you just did it, and you gave people a screen, and they were extremely happy because they weren't having to type the same thing every day. And we had a big printer side that would, print out something, right? So, that's really changed. And again, I'm going to go back to the service. So when I started, went to school, got my degree in computer information systems and management, wasn't sure what I wanted to do when I came out. So I went to work for a software company, did some sales actually, which was really good for me. Knew the product, how to sell it. And then also I did a little coding. Moved from there on to doing more coding and worked for some smaller places. That was actually really good for me because I was able to wear a lot of hats. I was able to learn unique things and then grow on that and not have to specialize in one thing. When I was younger, I did, and people probably aren't going to want to hear me say this, but I jumped a few jobs. I gave myself 2-3 years to learn a new skill set. And then if where I was working, they didn't have the ability for me to learn something new, I looked for that. And I was very aggressive doing that. But one of the things I found at a young age was no matter what position I was in, going and learning and meeting with other departments and other groups, finding out really what were their needs and actually developing a relationship with them, I think is what really helped me figure out where I wanted to go. I was good technically, but was not a good programmer. Let me just put that out there. No one would ever want to hire me to be a programmer again. But as far as a networking person, and I took great pride in, and I thought it was a thrill to come in and I could connect someplace in another part of the world to where I was, and then we could share data and move data. To me, that was amazing. That was a thrill. But in working with the other, where I was different again was the going out, learning, and actually developing relationships with the other departments, finance and sales and operations. I spent a lot of time walking our operations floor. I still do today. I would think most people at our work probably don't even know me as a CIO. I don't go around, I don't have a tag on, I don't act any differently. I still walk the floor with my guys. I think it's important if I ask them to. In fact, I demand it, that, we don't get to just go work in a room and think that we know what's happening down there. So, so throughout my career, I think that's what's really happened. And then I got into a company. I worked for them on and off over 2 different stints for over 20 years. Started off as just a basic networking guy and worked all the way up to the global director / VP of the department. That was before I came here to NN. And I would say the reason I got that was because I worked with all the different departments, and I made a point to learn to be with them, find out what they needed. So I think that's important.
And I think that's great. And so, Scott, we on a previous shows with some of our other guests who have been in IT roles and leadership, it's very common for us to hear, I was working in a different part of IT or in finance, or I was doing this and that. And so it seems to be a theme. And so on that topic, I guess a question for you is, you've held all kinds of different roles. So 2 questions for you that I'd love for you to kind of answer and give advice on for our listeners. One is, you said you went to get a CIS degree, basically, but you didn't really know what you wanted to do, and now you're a CIO. Did you know that? And how did you figure out that you wanted to eventually do that? And then the second thing is, there's a big debate going on right now for kids that are going to college or coming out of high school. Do they go to college for a computer science degree or a data analytics degree, or do they go get experience first? And with you having all the experience, I'm curious to hear your thoughts and what you would tell, a high school junior who's looking at their options and how they evaluate that.
Oh, that's a good question. So, I don't think I ever really knew I was going to be a CIO. I'm not even sure when I started that I would have really thought of what that was. I knew I wanted to fairly quickly. I think I knew I wanted to manage people. I enjoyed building teams. I was big in sports. I excelled in that. I was able to bring people together, and I think captain and stuff like that. And I think I always thought of people working together towards a common goal. You could get so much more done. I was never afraid, and I'm still not today, of having people that are better than me around me. I go by the old Reagan thing when he wanted to be president, and I'm not going to get this exactly right. I was pretty young, but I remember somebody asking, how does a spaghetti Western star, B-level spaghetti Western star, how does he think he could be president of the United States? He said, because I'd hire the smartest people around me and I'd let them do their jobs. That always resonated. That made a lot of sense to me. And I don't know if everyone is like that. I'm not threatened by that. I think that's how great teams happen. And so I think it didn't take me too long to figure out that I really like the technical side, but I really enjoy being in the meetings with the management, trying to figure out the challenges of where we were and where we needed to go and what were we missing? How did we get that? I love being, having a challenge set in front of me and trying to figure it out. It's a puzzle. How do we do it? Knowing our constraints and figuring out those constraints. And there's different ways of doing it too. So to me, that's the excitement. And then as I started going up through, and I think the hardest thing for all technical people, and I heard this I don't know if this is exactly right, but I heard in engineers and in IT, which are technical people in general, that 80% of those people fail when they try to get into management. And the biggest reason for that is they can't get rid of, they can't lose their technical side. I had that problem. In fact, one of the guys that's working for me now, it's his second round with me. He worked with me, left, got a better job, and came back. When I hired him, I asked him to go develop create these servers, get some stuff going. And he went down and he was working in our server room. And next thing you know, I was next to him. And I started working on it with him. And he looked at me and goes, "Am I doing this or are you doing this?" And I was like, "Well, I thought and he goes like, "Well, if you're going to do it all the time, how am I going to learn?" And I was like, "Yeah, well, but I could do it quicker." And we had to have this sort of discussion. And I was like, "Okay, light bulb. You're right. If I'm always doing it, you're never going to do it. And how am I going to build your skill set?" And it was just, I think it was my fear of losing that technical side. And you have to be prepared to do that. You will not be that technical person. I don't have the time to now get into the nuts and bolts and to stay up with the changes that happen. So, but I think once I got to that point, yeah, I knew I wanted to go as high as I could. I didn't know if I was going to be CIO, but I knew I wanted to go as high as I could. Education, I'm kind of split on that. I think that's a great question. We are very active in NN with co-ops, and we've actually, over the last couple of years, since I've been the CIO, have had 3 or 4 different high school co-ops, and we currently have one right now who will be over 2 years with us. We got him before his junior year. He just knew somebody in our company, came in and wasn't sure what he wanted to do. He liked technology, liked computers. But yeah, there's security, cybersecurity, there's networking, there's programming, there's, BI, business intelligence. There's infrastructure in general, servers, server teams. What do you choose? That's pretty tough. So we're real big in bringing people in like that, letting them do a certain amount of time in one area, and then exposing them to several, and then finding out what they start gravitating to. And I think that's really important. So I think education is important depending on what your goals might be. If you want to get into management, if you want to go up in that level, there are the ceilings if you don't have degrees. And you can be the best technical person out there, but they will limit your ability to move up. I don't feel that way with the technical people, though.
Do you hear? So I guess, do you think you made a really interesting point? And so if you're really technical and you want to be technical, it's going to be tough to manage and make sure other people are doing. Like you've said, I can't be the one configuring the server. I can't be the one taking the call. I need someone else to do that. But for those that are super technical, and there are folks that are very technical and very skilled, do they end up going the path of like a CTO? Or how does someone that is very technical, who wants to stay very technical and keep that knowledge, like how do they go into leadership? Or is there not really a path?
Well, that's a great question. Yeah, I would think, I'm not a CTO, but I think that would depend on the industry you're in too. If you're obviously in a technology-driven industry, we're in manufacturing. Technology is extremely important to us, but we're driven by technology, but in different ways. I think a CTO may be, I took my CISO course this summer, and I was in with some people that were very technical at that level. And there was a couple of people that were going to go into CTOs, but they were in technology-driven, organizations or industries. I could see that possibly because they would have that, but I still think that there would be, my guess is there's going to be limitations when you start putting officers or you start talking executive management people. They tend to want degrees. Most of the people I see that really excel if they're technically driven is they'll become level 3, like Cisco engineers, high level Windows engineers. Those people, you can write your paycheck on those. And we're all needing them, right? And they'll work for big service organizations, and they'll have to be ready to work for big organizations because they're so gifted that companies my size I don't have a need for a level 3 all the time. I need them every now and then or in certain times. But but most of those people that are that technical, that's what they want to do. And I've had a few of them that have come through and man, they're great, but they really just, as much as we try to, like I said, develop relationships and get in front of people, you got to do that. They just didn't excel in that. But boy, put them on a router or put them in that area and lo and behold, now they're working for the, big cloud-based companies. So yeah, there's great opportunities there.
And I guess going back, and I agree. I mean, I think, and by the way, I want to caveat, we're not saying anything about if you want to be technical, don't do that because you can't be the leader. I think it's just an interesting phenomenon, and we see it all the time, here at Opcala, because you have the folks that are in the trenches and they're on the help desk and they're the network admins, and these guys know technically they're wizards. They know everything. But like you said, and what I really appreciate what you said, Scott, about I really want my people to go walk, you guys are manufacturing, walk the floor, walk the line, go see finance. You want them to get the experience from the business because that's the way they're going to learn cross-functional in the business. What are we actually supporting? Who are our customers? And so I think the ability is what you're saying is the ability to kind of do that and think kind of above the technical and how we support our end users is the most important thing that you can do.
It is, again, because and if you don't understand their job, if you can't walk a mile in their shoes, again, my dad, I'm going to go back to my dad, owned a little tiny, he's a commercial fisherman and not technical at all. There was no technology in that whatsoever. But, I thought being his son, I was gifted to not have to do certain jobs. And he quickly corrected me that. I mean, we had a crew that worked for us, and I just thought I didn't have to do certain other things that I thought were below me. And he forced me to do those. And he said, if you don't know how to do those, you can't manage people and expect them to follow you if you haven't done it before and you don't know what it takes to do that. And I think that has helped me tremendously through my career, even raising my children that way, right? Is understand what you're asking others to do. And I think that's the saying, you can't be a programmer. 30 years ago, maybe you could be a programmer and get away with that. I don't think you should or could do that anymore. You have to know. The same as even just networking. You have to understand what's happening to the end user. Walk with them, talk with them. And the other thing, create a relationship with them. I can't stress that enough because when someone has a relationship with you, if I know you, Aaron, as Aaron, and you, Keith, as Keith, it's a much harder for me not to work with you on a problem than if you're just a nobody to me and I'm angry because, face it, when most people call a help desk or contact us, it's not because things are working great. It's because something's not doing what it needs to do and they can't get their jobs done. And that's what we have to remember too, is that's when people, they're there to do a job. And our app systems, our applications help them. When those don't work, they're upset because they can't get their job done. And if you have a relationship, they're much better, much more willing to work with you and walk you through it. And I think that it not only helps them, it helps us too. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, business at its core is relationships, and more and more of the IT department, just as you were alluding, is turning into much more of a business function than a simple cost center and a technology department. You are solving the business problems, and often you're making or breaking whether a company is possibly turning a profit or not at the end of the day based on your utilization. So yeah, relationships are becoming more and more important, just as you said. Switching gears, you manage a large manufacturing organization from a CIO perspective. And we all know manufacturing, they don't get to enjoy some of the high profit margins of a business services organization or a technology company or perhaps a social media company. How do you go about managing risk versus investment in the IT? What are some of your strategies? I guess, do you have a story around that That's fascinating to me.
Yeah, that's so I've been in manufacturing now for over 20 plus years of my 30 years, 30 plus years. So it's something I fell in love with because I love a lot of it's been automotive, but manufacturing is kind of manufacturing. And I love the speed and the intensity of it. That's why I always tell people when they interview, be careful because automotive is pretty rapid pace. But you're absolutely right. It's a low margin, and it happens typically is what we have to buy to run the machines that they have to use are multi-million-dollar machines, and their plan is to run those for 20 years. Technology, how much has technology changed in 20 years? A lot. So what I think has happened, and what we talk about a lot in our IT meetings is what I think is starting to come is this ramming, coming at it in two different worlds is we have to become cybersecurity aware, and operations just needs to run things for a long time because that's how they make money is you run and utilize the machines for 20 years. So what we constantly run into is vendors and these big machines don't have a good path of how to keep things secure either. They're making, what these CNC machines and others will do now is amazing on that side of it. But on the back end, on the embedded boards, it's very old technology. So how do we keep that in our environment, which we have to, my meetings with my board isn't about the cool things that IT is doing, right? It's like, hey, well, we developed a whole new program. This is really cool. It's about, are we secure? How are we doing what we need to? Because we're all seeing all the cybersecurity, the ransomware issues out there. So what are we doing to make ourselves better? All right, so here's the dichotomy, right? Is they want to run things forever and we got to be secure. So currently it's a situation we're having right now. We have tons of machines on our floor, and these all cost $80,000, $100,000, $1 million, $500,000 a box, and they run old operating systems that are unsupported, or they're going off at end of life. And you talk to the vendor, and there's no plans to move forward with those. Well, again, it goes back to you have to create a good relationship with operations because they've got to make the money. We don't make money for the company, but boy, IT sure can lose a lot of money. I mean, if things happen that go wrong, it could be a huge expense. So, there's the old thing is you could take these old machines and you could VLAN them off, separate them totally from your half of your part of your network. But the problem is today is these machines communicate and we get OEE, so the utilization of the machines, that stuff's all got to come in. Well, if you separate those, well, now you're working on, access lists, control access lists. Well, things don't work. Things get blocked, and operations is spending more time having to work through the boundaries or the barriers you're putting up there because, well, they're just not secure enough. So one of the things that we did is, I was put in front of our group is we found a company that kind of lets us geo-fence all the machines. So it's kind of like your cell phones. You can sit right next to somebody and text them, which unfortunately a lot of people do, right? Well, that cell phone doesn't just go 5 feet and talk to that one. It goes to a tower and it comes back. So everything centralizes and it scrubs that information. So what we found was the ability to take all of our devices without having to put any application on or anything else on it. It's a subnet change where we force it to communicate with one device. Nothing can talk east and west. It's got to talk north and south. It ultimately can go east and west after it goes north and south, and we scrub the packets. So we feel through a very affordable, much more affordable solution than if we went back and told them that, hey, you got to replace 14 of these one devices that we have on our shop floor that range at least around $80,000 a piece, which, oh, by the way, they run Windows 10. Windows 10 is going to be unsupported in a year and a half. There's absolutely no plan for those to be upgraded. So, all right, can't afford that, right? That's just one location. That's millions of dollars. Well, for just tens of thousands of dollars, we found a way to geofence those. And now we can keep those in our network. and we can only allow it to speak one way. And if an engineer has to program it, we can allow one device to, and it's very graphical, very easy for us. It doesn't take a tremendous amount of IT power. So that's some of the things that we've done is you just have to find, I think, more inventive ways to be as secure as you can be, right? There's risk in everything we do. There's risk in getting into our car to go to the grocery store. There's risk that we will always carry no matter what we do. We're just trying to minimize that. And so that's kind of what we're doing.
You said what in technology has changed in 20 years. Well, in 2002, I was on my way to go pick up the new Eminem CD that I was going to pop in my anti-skip 45-second CD player, Walkman or whatever, with my new over-the-ear headphones. My how things have changed with just our personal technology. And
I remember having the CD, 5-disc device where you could rotate it, and that was great.
Yeah, you had to pull over on the side of the road to change a CD because the 5 CD changer was in your trunk.
Yeah, it was in your trunk, but then you could have it shuffle, and you could get 80 different songs could play. That was great. So technology's changed.
That was cutting edge back then, bleeding edge technology. And I love your story, Scott, about how there's a business problem and there's a security risk to your end solution, your infrastructure, and you can't just go to the board and say, we need to go spend another hundreds of thousands of dollars to replace these, and it's only marginally going to make us more secure. Yeah, that's a great story of how you guys had to roll up your sleeves, redesign the architecture to solve a business problem. And that leads me to my next question. And this is something that a lot of CIOs and IT leaders in general are having to do more and more. Traditionally, IT leaders had to interface with the financial officers, the CFOs, the controllers to get budgets passed. But more and more today, IT leaders are a part of the executive team. They're underneath the CEO, and they're having to sell or pitch their ideas of making IT changes to an executive council. What are some of the strategies that you would tell an up-and-coming IT leader when he or she is confronted with a board, and what are some of the strategies they can do to get their message across and speak the language of the leaders of these different departments? Like, what do they care about? How do you finesse? I'm sure there's a little bit of a science and a little bit of an art, but just what are your thoughts around that?
Well, that's a great question. First off, I think that that is a change that's happening over the last few years. Is the IT, the CIO has to have a seat at the big table. So much is being asked of us. Technology is everywhere. There's nothing that we do today that, unfortunately, doesn't have some technology to it. So, with that responsibility, you have to have the ability to act and do the things. So I think that's the key is the demanding, or if you're going to take that, make sure that you have the authority and the ability to enact and make change that needs to be done. So how do you discuss with a board? I know how I did it. So when I had to talk to our board, they really didn't know where we sat. We had a big changeover. We had a CEO and some other people. We had a big, flip. And then I became the CIO with that flip. And I was the first CIO in several years of our company that actually spoke to the board directly. So I speak to them every quarter. I think the first thing, for me, it was very important, was and I said this to our CIOs when I first came in before I became that, is they said, well, where do you think I'm failing? I said, well, I think the biggest failure you have is you're not understanding your customer. And that would be the EVP of operations, your COO. What do they need? What are they hearing? Go to the sites, understand that. So when I became the CIO and I reported to the CEO, I'm lucky is we have a very good relationship. I do with our CEO. And I asked him point blank, what do you want to hear from me? I know what I want to say, but what do they know? What do they think? And he said, well, first off, you got to be you. And I think that's the first thing, is you got to be you. And we know what's wrong. The thing is they didn't know it. So first, set a standard. And when you meet with them the first time, honesty is the key. Do not I don't sugarcoat a lot. I do think I made my board hyperventilate a little bit the first time I met with them on where we really were, but I had to set expectations. You've got to create a standard. Where are you today? And then, this is where we are. And how are we going to get in? Where do we want to be? We want to get to this level up here. And then, what I was able to do was to set that. And then part of my first meeting was, this is what we're going to do next, and this is what we're going to do next. And then I know I'm going to meet with you every quarter. I'm going to, give you an update on that and tell you where we're going to go from there. So, and I can tell you right now, boards are scared to death about cybersecurity. It's just, that was my key. I really focused on the security of our company, where we weren't and where we were going to be and how we were going to get there and what it was going to take. And I told them, if you gave me this budget, and we were able to do this, we would get here in the next few years. And I think we're right on track with that. We've had our ups and downs. And again, but be honest about it. I will sit in 2 weeks with our board, and I'm going to tell them that we missed on a couple of things. We're off by another quarter. What we thought we were going to get done this year, we're not going to get done until the first quarter of next year, because there were more things that we didn't know when we got into some application system systems that we had to work through. But maybe I'm lucky in that sense with my board is we've gotten a good relationship. They've got my number. They can call me directly and ask me any question, and I'll answer it to the best of my ability. So
I think it's really a great point, though, to be honest, because if you don't, it's not going to help you. It's only going to make your job harder. I remember I used to have to audit, Fortune 500 companies. And I remember there was a great CIO that I used to get to go to the steering committees. And I remember there was this one steering committee, pretty much every project they had was behind schedule. And he knew it, but we showed up and we were watching them, each kind of project owner present, and they were using the green, yellow, red, or whatever. And everything was green, but one project was yellow. And it was like, after they all got done, 55 minutes of presenting, he said, we're going to meet again tomorrow this time, clear your calendars. Every single one of our projects is off pace, but you guys just presented everything as green. So, and he knew, like, the only way to change that organization was to be honest about the progress so that they could figure out, where do we focus? Because he kind of came in and said, we don't focus on anything. We just focus on reporting good results. So I think it's great.
Can I tag on?
Guess,
yeah. So I think it's not only important for you to be honest upward, but I think what you have to be able to do is the people that report to you, you've got to allow them to fail. I mean, listen, no one achieves levels. If they're reporting directly to me, they've already achieved certain levels. They've already done things. No one's gotten there by failing their whole life. I mean, it just isn't right. But we all fail at some point throughout the day. I mean, there's whatever, right? Maybe I fail in getting enough steps in for the day, but you've got to allow, and you can't put you can't have an environment where your people are so scared to fail, because that is failure in itself. And I know people have talked about that in the past. I've heard that too. But I would think if you talk to anybody that works for me, we have heart to hearts. I mean, I hold people accountable. And just because other people aren't held to this level doesn't mean that we're not. I don't buy into that. I don't do that in life, and I don't do that in work. I mean, there's a standard that we're going to do, but sometimes things happen, and you just, with everything you can put into it, you just can't get it done in the time frame, or something happened and it was not what you expected. But you have to allow that and learn from that. My biggest thing is that's okay. We don't work to fail, but we better learn from it. What I don't accept from my group is failing on the same thing over and over and over. If you don't learn, that's a problem. But, sometimes in failure, there's a lot of growth and learning. But again, not that you try to fail, but it does happen. Just be honest about it and learn from it. But allow people to do what they're supposed to do, and it will happen once in a while. But that's okay.
And you bringing the conversation all the way back to the beginning, like earlier, you said, if I do the job versus lead the person who's supposed to do the job, they're going to continue to fail by you helping them and not letting them succeed. And so I think one of the challenges is you want people to fail and fail fast. But my point is basically, in short, that like you have to let people fail. And then it's like you said, you have to coach and help them understand what did you do wrong so they don't get it wrong again. And then, to Keith's question and what you answered about, showing where are we honestly at, I imagine the other thing is that not only it's saying where are we honestly at, but here's the roadmap, here's the plan for how we're going to get better. And if you have that, you can say, this is how we're going to do it. If you don't have the plan, I think that's where people start to question, I don't know.
I would go forward if I didn't have a plan. I mean, you can't plan for everything, right? But you got to have a strategy and a plan of where are we going to be in 24? Because we're at 22 right now. We're already playing in 24 and 25. Where are we going to be? And then the next round is going to be 27 when the next round of Windows operating systems become unsupported, right? So where are you going to be before then, right? You can't wait till 26 or 27 to do that. You got to get ahead of it. Because we have hundreds and hundreds of servers and thousands of applications. If you wait until that wall is right there in front of you, you're already in trouble. And I think that's the big key.
Yeah. And I would say, well, I 100% agree. So I guess going back, Scott, you mentioned you said I love manufacturing because of the pace, because of what you're making something out of nothing, and it's a really cool industry. It is a competitive industry. It's a sometimes low margin industry. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on manufacturing as a whole, and I know there's tons of different manufacturing. What are some of the trends in IT specifically for manufacturing that you think that we're going to be talking about in the next 3, 5, 10 years that you're paying attention to?
Well, I think obviously foremost is cybersecurity. Because of our industry, I mean, if you look at Colonial Pipeline, if you take a lot of these manufacturers, one of the things you're going to find is they run old ERP systems because they've run them for 25 years and they do exactly what they need. I think we're going to see, and this has been a big push in our company, is and manufacturers love to repeat, do the same thing over, right? And they just do it better. Well, that's not IT. That's not technology. Technology reinvents itself all the time. And one of the things that I had to work with people on the shop floor is updating old applications. We have a lot of internal, so we've had to rewrite them. And they're like, but it's changed. I don't like the change. So change management is a huge thing, especially for people that's what they do. They're wonderful. They're just amazing at how they run a machine, but they don't like change. So I just brought up my iPhone and I'm like, guys, you guys have these change all the time. And so it's creating that relationship, explaining to them, because you can always tell the executive team, you can always tell management where you're going. The thing that even myself, we still have to work on is that communication down to the actual end user and letting them know ahead of time what's coming and why we're doing it. This is what we're doing. This is where we're achieving. And oh, by the way, we're going to make changes that next month may seem worse for you. And because sometimes we're going to take a step back. We have to. We're taking a step back. It'll seem like, oh my gosh, this is the dumbest thing in the world. But then all of a sudden, the next 3 steps will come real fast and you'll see it. And so I think that's a huge thing, is to get ahead and to try to figure out and work with your operations in your different facilities, manufacturing in general, on how can we become as secure as we can, reduce our footprint, and be where we are. And then I think the next is we love to gather data in manufacturing. Manufacturing just loves to give me all this data. And then we have this huge amounts of it sitting there, and this person does this with it, and this person does this with it. And Excel files run everywhere because everybody loves Excel. I think the next thing, and I think we're already in that revolution, but we're really getting into it, is the BI, is actually, getting, ETLs out there that we can pick and pull data, because we have so many different types of machines and in storage. How do we get that and put it into one? I'm a huge person into standardization. IT, we're going back to a centralized IT environment. We have 27 different manufacturing facilities globally. And when I got here, we had over 50. And every one of them, the goal prior to me was every one of them would have their own little IT server room. I shut that down and said, no, we're pulling it all back because I can't change 50 different locations and keep them where they should be. I can change one and have those people come in. So, it's almost like what was old is coming back again. Is, the old mainframe, we're not running mainframes, but the old thought is one to many. Well, I believe in that. It works for us in our environment. I'm not saying it does for everyone, but if we can change, so we have thousands of satellite stations on the shop floor, so they can do, real-time shift production logs. So they can, tell them what we're producing, scrap and everything else. If everyone had their own, which they did when I first got here, how old do you think, how old is everything? And how could you keep things updated? So now we run it off one central line. Yes, there's negatives to that, but the positive is I can make an update and I can push it out to thousands of different, end users globally in minutes. And it doesn't take a staff of 100. One person can do it. And I think that you've got to do more with less is what I was told a long time ago by a guy is, you got to learn how to do more with less, because just because we had another location doesn't mean I get to add 3 more IT people. It just doesn't work that way. So how do you learn to do more with less? I think that's where IT is going, or manufacturing in general with IT.
That's a great statement. It's amazing to see the cycles that the IT industry goes through. It's always cyclical, diversified, now moving back into more of a centralized environment that's serving you well and your organization, Scott. And we're running up on time here. In closing, we love to ask a question to everyone that joins our podcast in closing here. So I'm going to paint the scenario for you, Scott. Everywhere around the world, everyone's device, television set, digital billboard, everything goes black. And then what appears is Scott Finkhouse's face.
Oh, no.
What message about technology would you say, if you had the chance, to everyone around the world?
Oh, about technology. That's a great question. I'm not sure everybody's going to like to see it in my face, but it's funny because being in technology, I think that we've got to be right now. We have got to figure some things out. The youth right now talks about work-life balance. It's really important to them. I think we need to get to a technology balance in our world. And I do technology, right? We all do. It's amazing. You sit down and everybody's on their phone. I think that if we're not careful, we're going to lose the ability to communicate the way we should. And it goes back to where I make my people walk the floor. You've got to talk to people. There's even COVID. We all learned how to work remotely. I'm working remotely most of the time too, but there's still nothing quite like being in a room with people, seeing body language, and you can get a lot off from that. So I think what we've got to be careful of today is it's very easy to buy everything online, have it shipped right to your door. You open your door up, you grab it. You can go and get gas. You never have to see anybody, right? You put your card in, you get gas. I do that too. But at some point, we're going to lose ourselves in that is the small communities, how do you, today, if you buy a lawnmower online and it ships to your house, if that lawnmower doesn't work tomorrow, how does that get fixed? And I think that technology is wonderful, but we really have to be careful that it's not so much of our lives. We don't know how to do the rest. Again, coming back from my father had a small little, store and he did, but if you could just do that online, he wouldn't have had that and the interactions that people would have had and to be able to do what we did. And I just think that that's something we've got to be very careful of, is just not losing the ability to do the communication one-on-one, face-to-face, really understanding people because that's how you do it, and then not losing just our small businesses. I think our small businesses are probably, we're on a cusp right now. The small mom and pops, will they survive or will everything just be digital? And then if everything's digital, where do you go if something's wrong with that? So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think we got to get a balance in the technology world.
I actually hope that Keith's scenario comes true and that you do pop up on everyone's screen all around the world, because I think it's a great message. I do think that technology was made to help us do our jobs better, not do our jobs for us and not do life for us. And I think you're right. We are in a place where everyone is so dependent on tech. Like, do we know how to do things on our own? So I actually kind of hope the scenario happens. I hope it doesn't happen often, or I hope it doesn't happen.
I hope it doesn't
as the world ends, but I hope it happens kind of.
Every morning we wake up to Scott Finkhouse.
Yeah, he's your alarm.
That would be, I think that we would have to talk to a lot of psychological people on that. There'd be some issues, I think.
Yeah, probably so. We probably couldn't take over. But yeah, Scott, thank you for joining the show. I know that this has been a great show. Our listeners will get a lot out of this. I guess in closing, what's the easiest way to get in touch with you if someone listening has a question for you?
Well, I'm always I'm on LinkedIn, so if you ever want to connect, I love connecting and communicating with people. And if you my email address is scott.finkhouse@nninc.com. Yeah, I'd love to communicate with anybody. I love mentoring younger people. Like I said, building teams. I've had I think a lot of success for people that have worked with me and moved on to better positions, and I'm very proud of that. Never fun to lose people, but I didn't start. I always tell everybody I didn't start with NN at this position, so I don't expect everybody else to do that, and I wish them the best of luck. So
yeah. Well, I thought you had a lot of great advice, and so we're excited. We'll put some of this in the show notes. For those listeners out there, thank you for always joining us and loyally listening to our show. If you have any suggestions for us, email us, find us on LinkedIn, or check us out online, and subscribe on your favorite podcast station. Thanks for joining. Have a great day, and we'll talk to everyone soon.
thank you.
Thanks for listening. The IT Matters podcast is produced by Upcalla, an IT advisory firm that helps businesses navigate the vast and complex IT marketplace. Learn more about Upcalla at opkalla.com.